Welcome to RSCH503, Research Methods and Biostatistics, a 3-credit graduate course offered by Drexel University College of Nursing and Health Professions. As noted in the previous slide set, depression predicting pathological eating habits is an example of a sequential relationship. In a sequential relationship, if A exists, then later B will also exist. First A, then B, eventually. Depression, A, predicts pathological eating habits, B. Another important aspect of relational statements is the probability of occurrence of a relationship. A deterministic relationship is a relational statement indicating what always occurs in a particular situation. If A occurs, then always B. In a probability statement, on the other hand, there is an expression that the probability that something will happen in a given situation. If A occurs, then probably B occurs. Probability statements are tested statistically to determine the extent of probability that B will occur in the event of A. Small lowercase p is the symbol for probability. For example, there is a 50% chance that a patient with an indwelling catheter for 1 week will experience a urinary tract infection. This would be expressed as lowercase p greater than 0.50. And also important to consider in relational statements is the necessity of a relationship. In a necessary relationship, one concept must occur for the second concept to occur. If A, then always B. In a substitutable relationship, a similar concept can be substituted for the first concept, and the second concept will still occur. If A subscript 1 or if A subscript 2, then B. For example, the unconscious patient will remain hydrated, B, if he receives fluids. In this case, tube feedings, A subscript 1, can be substituted by hyperalimentation, A subscript 2. Finally, sufficiency of a relational statement must also be considered. A sufficient relationship states that when the first concept occurs, the second concept will occur, regardless of the presence or absence of other factors. If A, then B, regardless of anything else. A contingent relationship will occur only if a third concept is present. If A, then B, but only if C is present. In the case, C presents as an intervening variable. Relational statements about the same two conceptual ideas can be made at various levels of abstractness. High abstraction occurs with general propositions, relational statements noted in conceptual models. Hypotheses are at a low level of abstraction and are specific. Existing between the two are specific propositions at moderate levels of abstraction. A conceptual model is a set of highly abstract, related constructs that broadly explains phenomena of interest. Martha Rogers' Science of Unitary Human Beings is one such model. Others exist in nursing as well. Conceptual models express assumptions and reflect a philosophical stance. Theory is narrower than a conceptual framework. Theory consists of an integrated set of defined concepts. Existence statements, that is, statements that declare that a given concept exists or that a given relationship exists. A theory is used to describe, explain, predict, or control the phenomenon of interest. As an example of a research framework from clinical practice, a research team began with variables of interest. In this case, the number of mothers' visits and the infant's weight gain, and then identified the concept of interest that these variables represented. Thus, concept, bonding, variable, number of mothers' visits. The concept, thriving, the variable, infant weight gain. Conceptual maps are vehicles for expressing frameworks visually. Such maps diagram the interrelationships of concepts and statements. Conceptual maps may suggest hypotheses to test. They may stimulate researchers to ask related or different questions. Conditions, both direct and indirect, that may produce the outcome are specified in maps. In constructing a study framework, an investigator may follow several steps as noted in this and the following several slides. The first step is selecting and defining concepts, then developing relational statements that are outlined in a hierarchical manner. The investigator may then develop a conceptual map that expresses this framework. The first step was selecting and defining concepts to be studied in a research program. Starting with the problem statement, the investigator may identify concepts of interest in a particular population that can be studied as research variables. Once concepts are clearly identified, the investigator must succinctly define them, both conceptually and operationally. The step of linking concepts through relational statements is the next important aspect. Reviewing the literature may point to such statements, or, if not, then the investigator proposes the relational statements. Recall that the validity of the proposed relationship may be discerned from the literature or extracted by inference after careful review of previous research. As an investigator constructs a study framework, careful attention is given to the following for clarity of thought. First, propositions. Abstract, formal statements of the relationship between two concepts is listed. Then each proposition or relational statement is followed by a hypothesis or research question. Each proposition may have one or more than one hypothesis. Once a researcher has clearly identified propositions and hypotheses emanating from same, a conceptual map is developed. Such map will have a clear problem statement and purpose identified. The concepts of interest will be defined conceptually. The relevant literature will be reviewed, and relational statements linking the concepts will be developed both in language and in a diagram. Throughout the process of developing a conceptual map, the investigator will review existing theories that relate to the phenomenon of interest and will recognize existing conceptual models that are congruent with the evolving studies framework. Critically important to this process is the appropriate linking of propositions, relational statements, to the research hypotheses. As an example, a researcher states the following: the effect of heart failure pathology on quality of life is mediated by symptoms such as angina and decreased exercise tolerance. Her research questions evolved from this model. Her research questions reflected the model as follows. 1. What are the relationships between cardiac pathology, functional limitations and quality of life at week 1, that is entry into external counterpulsation, and week 7, the end of external counterpulsation. 2. Is there an improvement in cardiac output at the end of the 7-week external counterpulsation program? 3. Is there an improvement in functional limitations at the end of the 7-week external counterpulsation program? And 4. Is there an improvement in perceived quality of life at the end of the 7-week external counterpulsation program? Cardiac pathology was measured by cardiac output. Functional limitations were measured by the Seattle Angina Questionnaire and the 6-minute walk test, and quality of life was measured by the short form 36 health survey and the Minnesota Living with Heart Failure questionnaire. This presentation was prepared for graduate nursing students at Drexel University College of Nursing and Health Professions. The primary book used in this research course is The Practice of Nursing Research, Appraisal, Synthesis, and Generation of Evidence, 2017 edition, by Jennifer R. Gray, Susan K. Grove, and Suzanne Sutherland. This book is published by Elsevier Saunders, St. Louis, Missouri.